Welcome back to the Storyteller Soul Lounge. It is a new space. For the past couple of months, I have been in a transitional state, trying to move from one location to another and also get settled back in. I've been trying to grow in the time that I have taken away from social media. And it's given me the opportunity to reflect on what I want this space to be now. See, in the past, I was trying to jam a lot in, and there were two things that kind of came as a bit of a epiphany to this process. One of them was I was struggling with the 30 to 45-minute episode format. I found that to be very overwhelming, and when I would have to record all the time, it was exhausting to the point where it felt performative, and that's not the goal. The second thing that I learned while I was thinking about things was, as a screenwriter and musician and someone who struggles with mental health, I have always felt isolated in the process of creating. And by that I mean, if you go online and you see somebody doing like a before and after process, you see the picture of them before and then you see the after. And in order to access the transformation part, understanding how they got there, sometimes you'll see online, not all the time, subscribe to the link in my bio or purchase this particular thing, and I will tell you how. In creative endeavors, sometimes those products look a lot like something from Masterclass or storytelling labs or workshops. Um, Even the self-help gurus do this with mental health. They'll, charge you for life coaching and things like that. And oftentimes you will find that either it's regurgitated information or you could have accessed it on your own. And I'm not saying the workshops and everything are not all beneficial. Some of them are. Important to do your research, but certain aspects of it for me was I was missing the in between, the messy parts of the creative process, to know I wasn't the only one alone dealing with self doubt and all these other things that I struggle with as a writer and a musician, especially in a, you know, ever changing social media world that constantly can really get to us, and we struggle with that. So I thought if I didn't have that space right now, I'd create it. And so the lounge is now a creative liminal space, which means it's ever changing, projects are ever evolving. And speaking of projects, I was going to now take this space to show you what my process is like when I'm creating a show or a film or a song, and what goes through my brain when I struggle with these things. So, for the first episode, I'm going to create a television show pilot from scratch. One of the things that I was always uncomfortable with in the first stages of being a screenwriter was the development process, which is kind of the producer aspect or the pre-pro or not the writing. It's the story building that was always tough for me. And as part of this new podcast regime, I built for me tools and templates that help my ridiculously anxious brain or the overthinker who thinks about a bunch of different ideas 1,000 times over. And that is me. So I was not able to find things that would help me with writer's block. And I created my own, way of thinking. And I use these tools to build worlds, build characters, build plots, everything. And so for this TV show that I'm going to do, I only had two visions of it that run in my head. And shows and ideas come to me in very different ways, sometimes from music, sometimes at random. But I only had two visions of this show. One of them was a 16, 17-year-old kid doing parkour on a rooftop. And the song that was playing in the background was Hand Clap by Fitz and the Tantrums. So I was running around. I don't know if he's running from bad guys or from what, but he was running and that song was playing. And then the second image I have is a father and a daughter. The father has a very Milo Thatch and Flynn Carson energy to him. So I was like, maybe he's an art historian, maybe he's a history professor, maybe he works in a museum. Either way, him and his daughter live in an abandoned movie theater. Those are the only two things I have to go off of. Sometimes I have archive ideas that sit in like the box that I keep it in for like years. And I had a short story idea called The Great Adventures, and that was a concept that sort of tied into this. And then there was another story that was called American Rosetta, which was also going to be kind of similar. And then I just kind of let it sit there. So now it's called The Revisionist. And there are 3 reference points that I have for this show. The mythical spirit of Assassin's Creed. And I'm going to put them down here. Feel like a professor. Don't mind my handwriting. I'm still getting used to writing on a board. Now I feel like a professor. So Assassin's Creed, the mythical spirit of that. The animus, the ancestral lineage stuff where you can hijack into an ancestor. The adventurousness and the thrill and the excitement of National Treasure. I'm a big fan of Jerry Bruckheimer Productions. Um, so I do love when he does like the fantasy fiction action adventure projects. And then the last thing was my favorite. And this is one of those things where I'm like, maybe the story didn't have to manifest itself until now because I didn't see this show until a couple years ago. But the ensemble chemistry of Six of Crows from the Shadow and Bone world, because I love, man, my handwriting. I love a good misfit ensemble cast with like Kaz and Inej and Jesper, and I love when found families come into play. It's part of my writer's signature, so I do love that. These are my reference points: Assassin's Creed, National Treasure, Six of Crows, and it's the new title is called The Revisionist. Now, in the anchoring method, there are 3 points that I usually have to figure out in order for me to continue developing the show: the origin, the anchor, and the pendulum. Now, I'm not going to worry about talking about what the origin and the pendulum is in this episode. I will probably explain the methods a little bit more down the road, but the one thing I do want to focus on is anchoring. Now, in the case of creating like a season arc, I see this show maybe about 4 or 5. I settled on 4 seasons just because it felt right. If you're lucky, you can go more, but I feel like 4 is a good setting. An anchor for me, an anchor word, I like to tie a theme to the season. It helps me with my continuity. It helps me track character development. It helps me look for weak storylines because I can see from more like a bird's eye view what I'm doing. And these anchor words are not meant to box me in. They don't do that. It's not like I have to just honor that word in every episode. It's more of a guide, like a North Star. It keeps me in kind of a better, hard to describe this. It's a driver. It's like a motivator for me to, make sure my characters are living out their true identities. And you know how like in shows, like you're watching and you're like, I don't know why the character did that because all that character development just went down the drain. Anchor words help me with that because I like protect my characters. So I like to do that. So what I'm going to do is for each season, I'm going to come up with an anchor word. Okay, 4 seasons, not the hotel. Okay. Now I got the fits and the tantrums stuck in my head. So season 1, the way that I'm picturing this for the characters, ancestral lineage and bloodlines and uncovering. I can't say words like, because I'm already aware of this. My brain wants to lean towards like adventure, mystery, intrigue, um, thrill, excitement. These are tonal words, and tonal words means the genre, and it doesn't mean a guide. It doesn't mean something that you follow. But if we're talking about like uncovering, or when you get in the animus, I'm thinking something like awakening is a good one for season one, because like they're coming in to this identity, but they're not yet choosing it. So it's discovery, discovery maybe, discovery channel, becoming. I don't know how I feel about that for season one. Birth maybe, similar to awakening. I would say reincarnation, but that doesn't really work for an anchor word in my brain. Something about becoming, but awakening feels like a solid word for me for season one. And that's the other thing is like if I'm doing this and I see a commonality, but the word is different, but it's saying the same thing, then your theme is already manifesting, right? Like you can already see what's happening. Because then it's like, oh, well, that's just the same definition, but they're different words. I like awakening for season one because in Assassin's Creed you get in the Animus and then you get into the ancestor's body, and so I feel like in the revisionist that's what season one should be about, is awakening your lineage, awakening a persona. But for some reason becoming staring at me, but I don't think it's a season two one either, because in my brain becoming is a choice. So to choose your destiny, to choose to be that person, that identity. So I don't know if I would put it, I like the word, but I don't know if I'd put it in season one. Now, these other ones, discovery, birth, I think awakening is our winner. Now, when I think about season two, after something's been awakened in you, there's maybe pushback, denying destiny. A lot of protagonists, especially in something like National Treasure, doesn't really have, I mean, they are defying, the government, so to speak. I would almost think belonging for me. Belonging might be belonging might be a good word. Um, like learning to figure out who you are once you've, kind of stepped into the awakening stage. It's like, where do I fit? Where do I belong? But then again, belonging also kind of feels like a season one word as well. Like, what happens after you've discovered okay. What happens after you've discovered? See, no, now I realize I don't like that. Maybe, maybe season three is about belonging. Maybe season two is about disruption and rebellion and defying destiny. Once you uncover it, I feel like awakening would prompt defiance and rebellion. So maybe belonging is actually season three. And I'm going to move this up here. Maybe rebellion is actually in season two, or defiance. That's much of a word here. Defiance, anarchy. I uh, I don't know. I think that once you've kind of discovered your destiny, you try everything to not be it or to not follow in the footsteps of that. So maybe it is rebellion. But belonging, for some reason, on season three is kind of sitting on me because it's like it's heavy on me. Belonging, after you've disrupted the system and you've lost yourself, in that disruption, you look to belong, you know, to find your family, to find a group. Reckoning is another one that's very popular, but I don't, oh my goodness, I don't know. Something, season 3 tends to be pretty dark, but I know, I'm going to move this down here because I know becoming, oh! All right, that fell on the floor. We're not doing that. So I'm going to rewrite it. That fell on the floor. Not happening. So I know that I feel very strongly about becoming in season 4. I'm struggling with season 3 because I do feel like Rebellion's a good season too. To awaken, the anchor word is awaken. Once you've awakened and you discovered your destiny, you try hard to fight your destiny. So you rebel, you defy, you what is the natural step in season 3? Look, here comes the consequence. Because that is the natural step in season 3. Once you've screwed with destiny, destiny bites back. So is it retribution? Is it reckoning? Is it redemption? Redemption feels more like a season 4, like a return. Got to deal with the consequences of your actions after you've disrupted the system. So it's like some kind of being haunted by your regrets and whatnot. So reckoning, maybe reckoning might reckoning might be my favorite word for this situation. Does it? Not belonging. After you've disrupted the system, you must deal with the consequences of your actions. Things are heavier, things are harder. And as soon as you have gone through redemption, perhaps you will become who you were always meant to be. Yeah. I think, and here's the thing, even though these 4 words are sitting up here, the ideas evolve. So even if I settle on them right now, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to stay. So things change when you're going through the process. But I feel very confident about season 1. I do think something like Awakening I can really play with. I can see what happens with that. But for now, this is a little bit of the anchoring method. I won't dive too deep into it, but this is kind of how I work. And they come to me at random times sometimes. I'll be thinking about something or listening to a song that I had in mind for the soundtrack, and then a scene comes to mind or something surfaces at random points. But this is a bit of the anchoring method, and this is where I'm going to cut off for episode 2 next time. And I'm excited for that one because that is going to be the speed dating technique, and that is where I use a tool that helps me create characters for shows. So you will get to meet, or we will get to meet, some of the characters for the revisionists and see how that comes out. But in the meantime, thank you for joining me for the first new episode in the Soul Lounge, and stay tuned for more.